So if you've ever explored ways to be more sustainable, composting has probably come across your radar. Maybe something you're interested in, you're intrigued about, want to learn more about the benefits and whether it's something you can actually do. Well, in this first video, we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of composting, why we plan on doing it, and why I think you should too. Hey guys, welcome back to Saving Green. My name is Josh. Thank you again for checking out the channel, where we hope to discuss ways to save money and be more sustainable at the same time. And today we're going to talk about the benefits of composting. The basic premise of composting is taking biological or organic waste, and instead of dumping it in a landfill where anaerobic bacteria convert it to methane, we can repurpose it and basically utilize natural occurring bacteria and fungi and organisms in the environment around us and convert that waste into something useful, like compost. So what are the four major advantages to doing so? Well, I think the first reason why you may want to consider composting is because it will allow you to quantify and actually think about every day what you're buying, what you're consuming, and what you're throwing out. By collecting your waste every day and ultimately putting in a compost bin, you are taking stock in all of this, whether consciously or not. And by doing so, you can't help but think about, well, what foods am I consistently throwing away and what am I consuming completely? And that will affect your purchasing habits at the grocery store, your eating habits, and ultimately help you reduce your waste to begin with. And obviously, that's a good thing. The second thing that happens when you compost is you really reduce your carbon footprint. And this happens because, as I mentioned before, when you take biological waste out of the landfill and put it out in the open, when it can be broken down much more efficiently, what happens is you are saving a lot of methane production. Methane is the byproduct of methanogenesis, or anaerobic breakdown of all the biological waste that occurs inside a landfill, for example. When you throw away all that food waste in a steel plastic bag and dump it underground, what do you expect is going to happen? No air is getting to that. So what happens is carbon is used as an electron acceptor, and ultimately methane and water vapor are produced, both of which are pretty potent greenhouse gases. Methane can also be further metabolized by other bacteria into hydrogen sulfide, producing sulfuric gas and all the other unpleasant maladies that you might have experienced if you've ever driven by any of the glorious mountains we have here in South Florida. Yep, landfills. And in fact, if you look at those landfills up close, you may see that there are these little tubes sticking out from the top. What are they emitting? Methane. Now, some of it can be recaptured and purposed and reprocessed into natural gas, which is better than wasting it completely, but that still doesn't ultimately limit the carbon footprint long term, and that process isn't perfectly efficient. So ultimately, you're still producing way more atmospheric carbon than necessary. Furthermore, if you look at methane in particular, you see that 50% of all the methane is due to municipal solid waste breakdown, which is this little sliver right here. Now, what's this huge slice of the pie? That's enteric fermentation, also known as cow farts, or human farts for that matter. But it basically is the anaerobic breakdown of food waste within our enteric system, or our GI tract, that again contributes to methane and global warming. So how do we cut back on that? Well, Burger King, for example, in a previous video that I will link up here, has figured out that by adding lemongrass to their cow feed has actually cut down their methane production by a significant amount. While that's certainly a step in the right direction, if we can cut back even more by composting, that's also a very good thing. And the last benefit in terms of the carbon footprint is reducing the volume and mass that is filling up our trash bins. According to the USDA, about a third of all the food produced for human consumption is just thrown away and wasted. And that accounts for about a quarter of the landfill mass every year. And that also means that less mass is transported by our garbage trucks every day. That means less fuel is needed. That means less carbon exhaust from all of these trucks. That also is a good thing. Furthermore, the USDA estimates that per capita, about $370 per year can be saved in waste management costs. Now, the third benefit is nitrogen waste. So this brings us to the question of garbage disposals. Now, prior to composting, we were discarding most of our food scraps down the drain, thinking it was better than trashing it. And while that is true, it's still not ideal. All that waste has to be further processed, which is quite a burden on our septic system. And in geographic areas where water is limited, it's even more of a burden. So what happens to all the food scraps? Well, it gets broken down, it gets separated, some of it gets incinerated, some of it gets composted, some of it gets thrown away. since this process isn't perfect, you're still going to end up with small amounts of nitrogen waste that ends up in our water system and agricultural runoff, which can lead to algal blooms like we had in South Florida last year, where a huge amount of red tide was noticed all across the west and east coast of the peninsula. Now, this was a combination to warming water temperatures due to climate change, as well as tidal shifts and ocean currents also due to climate change, coupled with excess nitrogen in the water. Now, these protozoans and algal and cyanobacteria can proliferate in these environments, and they can choke off nutrients to other resources, including fish, wildlife, coral reefs, etc., making our waterways basically uninhabitable. So that's another benefit to composting, to save the burden on our waterways and make our runoff much cleaner. And the last and most tangible benefit to composting is compost itself. When the process of composting is finished, all that organic waste is broken down into this earthy, soil-like substance that is rich in nutrients and the right mix of bacteria and fungi that can be used as a natural fertilizer. So what do you do with it? Well, you can add it to your houseplants, to your gardens, to your lawns. You can package it, you can sell it, you can give it away. You can do any number of things that is better than dumping it in a landfill. And for all those reasons, I think composting is something you might want to consider doing. So if you want to know how to compost, that's the topic of the next video. We're going to explore different ways to do it depending on where you live and your particular circumstance, and to show you that almost anyone can compost if they want to. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Any likes or subscriptions are greatly appreciated, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Thanks again. Bye.